Number 8. Margaret Serko. 35-year-old Pennsylvania woman Margaret Serko was arrested in March of 2020 following a stunt that resulted in the store discarding over $35,000 worth of food products. In what was described as a twisted prank, Serko had entered Geraghty's supermarket in Hanover Township, where she began making verbal threats by claiming she was sick. The incident occurred roughly 2 weeks after the coronavirus crisis had been declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. Serko went through the aisles intentionally coughing and spitting on fresh produce and various other items, including parts of the store's meat and bakery displays. She then tried to shoplift a 12-pack of beer before staff demanded she leave the store. Even though the woman wasn't actually suspected to have been infected, Geraghty's owners reported that they had to take all the necessary precautions, even if it meant eliminating thousands of dollars worth of food. Over 15 employees were involved in the cleanup and disposal efforts, with owners noting the distasteful prank's only silver lining was that it had enabled them to test and potentially reinforce their safety protocols. Serko was arrested and charged with 1 felony count of threats to use a biological agent and 1 felony count of criminal mischief. Additionally, she faced misdemeanor counts of criminal attempt to commit retail theft and disorderly conduct. She was held at Luzerne County Prison on a $50,000 bail, and a mental health evaluation was ordered. Number 7. Angela Timmons. An April Fool's prank involving the false report of a shooting resulted in the arrest of a woman from Spartanburg, South Carolina, in 2014. The daughter of 54-year-old Angela Timmons received a text from her claiming that shots had been fired at the Virginia College campus. Timmons, an employee at the learning institution, had written to her daughter that she'd heard gunfire outside the office. She then claimed to be hiding for her own safety. The daughter called 911 after Timmons had failed to answer several follow-up messages. According to the Spartanburg County Sheriff Chuck Wright, over a dozen of his deputies were dispatched to the site of the supposed shooting, only to find that no such incident had occurred. Timmons, who admitted to the alarm-raising prank, was taken into custody on several charges, including aggravated breach of the peace and disturbing a school. The woman became the target of criticism once news of the prank began circulating online, with a number of users arguing she'd made light of the serious issue of mass shootings at U.S. learning institutions. Number 6. Erica Marie Farmer. A woman from Gulf Shores, Alabama carried out what she characterized as a prank gone too far. In late February of 2021, Erica Marie Farmer's neighbor arrived home on February the 28th and noticed that her goat had disappeared from her yard. She then learned that photos of the animal had been uploaded on social media by 34-year-old Farmer. The latter had painted the goat with food coloring and shampoo, making its body blue, hooves pink, and horns green with orange. The owner called 911 and deputies descended upon Farmer's home, where they found the goat. Farmer admitted to coloring it, but maintained it had all been a prank, claiming that she didn't know it was her neighbor's goat, as it was often at her cousin's house. Farmer's uncle, Gary Mitchell, confirmed that the goat had wandered onto his property and hadn't been stolen. Farmer was nevertheless charged with animal cruelty and theft of property in the 2nd degree. Under Alabama law, any theft of livestock is to be considered a felony. Farmer, who was released after posting $6,000 bail, talked to a media outlet and called the fact that she was facing felony charges for the prank a little ridiculous. Number 5. Shona Cox and Vicky Albone. After a prank gone wrong, in August of 2018, 2 young British women were jailed on the Greek island of Corfu. Shona Cox and Vicky Albone, both aged 20, had met a group of men on Issos Beach on August the 24th. The women dared one of their new acquaintances, identified as Christopher, to run into the sea in just his boxers. Then, in what they described as a harmless prank, Cox and Albone hid Christopher's clothes several sunbeds down from their own. They went back to their 4-star Labranda Sandy Beach resort, where a team of local officers approached them later in the evening. They demanded that the women return the clothes and Rolex, valued at close to $550, which they'd purportedly stolen from Christopher. According to the police, the latter claimed that he and his friends had chased the women back to the resort after realizing they'd taken his property. However, Cox and Albone maintained that the chase had never occurred and denied stealing or even seeing the watch in question. The holidaymakers were taken back to the station, where they were ordered to give written statements and find an attorney even though it was a Saturday. It marked the beginning of a nightmarish experience for the two holidaymakers. They were strip searched and then detained in a cell that reportedly had urine on the floor and blood-smeared walls. Cox and Albone weren't given food or fresh water for over 24 hours. At one point, the former got sick and vomited, but instead of helping, a guard reportedly threw boiled sweets at her. The women's phones were confiscated, but then returned to them the following day for 15 minutes so that they could contact their families. They also used the devices to record their living conditions. Their court hearing was then delayed as their accusers had left for Athens, and over the following days, the women were allowed to return to their hotel. They were eventually found not guilty and cleared to leave the country. Number 4. Carl Erickson. In January of 2012, a pensioner from South Dakota gunned down a former classmate over a locker room prank that had reportedly occurred over 5 decades prior. In the 1960s, Carl Erickson was a student sports manager at Madison High School, while Norman Johnson was a prodigious student athlete. The prank had reportedly involved the latter pulling Erickson's jockstrap over his head in the locker room. Johnson played football in college and obtained a degree in education before returning to Madison High School, where he worked as a teacher and track coach for 30 years. On January the 31st of 2012, Erickson, a Watertown resident, went to the home of his former classmate. He rang the doorbell, and when 72-year-old Johnson answered, asked him to verify his identity. Erickson then shot him in the face twice with a .45 caliber handgun, killing him. He was arrested, but during his ensuing trial, pleaded not guilty on account of mental illness. A psychiatrist noted that Erickson had a long history of anxiety problems, while also suffering from recurring and treatment-resistant depression. His defense attorney confirmed that the prank had been a triggering factor in the shooting, while Erickson himself stated during his May arraignment, "I guess it was from something that happened over 50 years ago. It was apparently in my subconscious." The victim's family would argue that Erickson had been jealous of the former teacher's success and standing in the community. A plea deal was ultimately struck in which Erickson admitted to murder in the second degree, for which the 73-year-old was sentenced to life in prison. Number 3. Tori Wheeler. A teenager from Wagner County, Arizona, cut her boyfriend's neck in the spring of 2013 following what police reported had been an April Fool's prank gone wrong. 18-year-old Tori Wheeler told her boyfriend, Derek Bauer, that she was pregnant. He became angry upon hearing the news, at which point Wheeler produced a knife and threatened him. She would later tell the authorities that her wielding of the blade had also been part of the prank. As tensions escalated, Bauer threatened to call the police, which enraged Wheeler. The teenager slashed her boyfriend's neck and bit him twice. Bauer was taken to a local hospital, and even though his injuries weren't life-threatening, the cuts to his neck required 7 stitches to mend. In the aftermath, Wheeler faced charges of assault with a deadly weapon. Today's topic was requested by Instagram follower Louis Barberio. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below, or follow us on Instagram and reach out to us there. Number 2. Giovanni Rosario and Raymond Hernandez. In 2011, a woman in New York City was nearly killed after a prank resulted in her being struck by a falling shopping cart. On October the 30th, Giovanni Rosario and Raymond Hernandez, who were both underage at the time, threw the cart from 4 floors up at the East River Plaza Mall. It crashed on top of Marion Hedges, a real estate agent and charity volunteer who was shopping for Halloween candy for less privileged children. Surveillance videos of the incident would show the boys as they dropped the steel and plastic cart, as well as the moment in which the woman was struck outside an East Harlem Target below. Hedges' son, reported as being around the same age as Rosario and Hernandez, was with her at the time but wasn't harmed. Hedges suffered life-threatening head injuries and, although she survived, experienced long-lasting brain damage in the aftermath. Rosario and Hernandez were taken into custody and admitted to the near-fatal prank. The latter was ordered to spend 6 months in a therapeutic group home, while the former was sentenced to 6 to 18 months at the Graham Windham School for At-Risk Kids in Westchester. Number 1. Fatal La Llorona prank. Following a prank in which she dressed up as a ghost, a woman was fatally shot in the neighborhood of San Miguel Dorami in the municipality of Naucalpan de Juarez. Mexico. The incident took place in October of 2021, a few days before the Day of the Dead. The victim's name wasn't released by local authorities, but it was mentioned that she was in her early 20s. She'd donned a white gown with a veil and began wandering the streets pretending to be La Llorona, the weeping woman. In Latin American folklore, La Llorona is the ghost of a white-clad woman who roams the earth mourning the death of her 2 children. Parents usually tell the story to prevent their young from wandering off after dark. In keeping with the legend, the prankster was reportedly heard shouting, "My children," repeatedly. A bystander filmed her antics moments before she was shot. As reported by multiple media outlets, one neighbor was so surprised and scared by the ghostly presence that he opened fire on the woman. She was fatally struck by several bullets and the shooter then fled the premises. The clip of the ill-fated prank, as well as a gruesome image of the deceased victim, was shared online in the incident's wake. No arrest had yet been made, according to the latest updates on the matter. Thanks for watching. For $100, would you play a ding-dong ditch prank on Mike Tyson? Let us know in the comments section below.